Herman Danenhower, Danenhower Apiaries. I want to put a little video on YouTube on a Juniper Hill Split. John Hogg kind of invented this split, a way to make the half comb, which he also invented. And I think I simplified it, at least for myself. So it's April 23rd, here where I live in Pennsylvania. Dandelions are about full bloom. This particular hive wintered well. I was in here. And if it winters well, I wait until the queen is using the lower hive body. There's some brood down there, but it's not full, and this hive is not preparing to swarm. That's kind of important, but it's a real good hive. And I'm going to show you what I do. I'm going to remove this upper hive body. This is a particularly good hive. And we're going to put a queen excluder in. You can see if the bees are preparing to swarm if you look for queen cells underneath. There's some emergency cells here, but there's no eggs or larvae in there. So what we're going to do is put a queen excluder on here. The queen excluder, notice I have a notch in here so that the drones can get out. So we'll put a queen excluder on. I'm just going to put this back again. All right. Now what we did is isolate the queen here or here. I don't know where. And I added an additional shallow super for dandelion honey and stuff like that. And we're going to come back in 10 days' time, and we're going to know where the queen is just by looking for eggs and young larvae, and we won't have to find the queen. And in 10 days' time, we're going to do a split. Okay, we're at Danenhower Apiaries. We're going to put a video on a simplified method, or anyway I feel so, of a Juniper Hill Split to make the Hogg Half Comb. We're doing part 2. Part 1, we put a queen excluder between this colony when the queen was laying and there was brood in both halves. And 10 days ago we put that in, and at that time we had no idea where the queen was, this half or this half. But now in 10 days' time, I don't have to find the queen, I have to find eggs and young larvae, and I'm going to know where she has been trapped. And the half that she's been trapped is going to get set aside, and the half where she has been kept out of for 10 days, we're going to introduce a queen. So we're going to split this hive, prevent swarming, and make some beautiful Hogg Half Comb. So let's see if we can find out where this queen might be. This hive is facing that way. The bees are flying in and out that way. This shallow super, John Hogg used to call a buffer. I can tell it's really pretty full of dandelion honey because it's heavy. And then if there's eggs or larvae in here, then the queen is in this half. If there are not, then she's down there. So let's see what we can learn here. This method involves not having to find the queen. We just know where she is, by the presence of eggs and larvae. Okay, she's in the top half. Don't know if we can see that. This is advanced brood, larvae, young larvae, and there's even eggs. I don't think the queen is on this frame. Again, that's the beauty of this method. We don't have to find her. We simply know that she's in this top half above the queen excluder. So this goes on its own bottom board. Which I have set right over here. Now she's been above this excluder, so beneath the excluder, the only brood that's down there would be advanced. There are no eggs or larvae. They cannot raise a queen, but we're going to introduce one. So you have to plan ahead a little for this method. I planned ahead and ordered queens. There's a queen in this cage here. These bees readily accept her because they cannot make their own because of the 10 days that the queen has been kept out of here. So we introduce a queen, and then we put on this Hogg Half Comb Super. This is 40 serving trays. The half comb is, in my opinion, the most unique of all honeycombs. Now we're going to put the Hogg Half Comb Super on here. A queen has been introduced. So with this method, you have to involve a second cover and a second bottom board. So we put that on there. What John Hogg calls the set aside, in this case, the queen is in here. You can set that anywhere you want in the apiary. Oftentimes, I set it right aside of the parent stock, facing the opposite direction. So the parent stock, where they're accustomed to going in and out, they don't find her over here. They return where they've been going all this time. Okay, this is our set aside now. Now the set aside, which has the queen in it, it'll lose all its foragers because they're accustomed to going in and out over here. And in effect, what we have done is swarmed this hive on our timetable. The set aside actually in 2 or 3 weeks comes to strength itself, and so I'll put a Hog Super on that one also. So on the set-asides, I usually put a smaller super on, an 8-frame super. The set-aside will come to strength after the main honey flow, and they oftentimes make me some nice comb, but I only ask them to do 32 instead of 40. So we'll just put on an 8-frame, and this is not important. If you get summer honey flows where you live, the set aside could get a 10-frame. Just close up the gap with a board. Put the cover on. A little bit of weight. And now we did a Juniper Hill Split that I think is a lot easier than some of the other methods. And as the season progresses and the swarming season comes to an end, you can reunite all this if you don't want more hives. But in today's world where you're always replacing losses, the split just kind of keeps you where you want to be. So that's part 2, and part 3 will be harvest. If we have a good season, we'll come back and we'll see what we have here. Oftentimes the parent stock can make a second Hog Super for you. The set aside generally only makes you 1, but all that would depend on where you live and how good the honey flows are. So we'll go to part 3 in a few weeks and see what we got. Herman Danenhower, Danenhower apiaries. We're here for the 3rd and final part of the comb honey, the Hogg Half Comb. We're going to harvest from this hive here. It's a particularly good year this year. I'm content to get 1 nice super comb honey where I live here in Pennsylvania. It was an outstanding year. This is the home apiary. Here we have another hive that made 2 supers. Up there's a hive that made 2 supers. Very outstanding year. Mostly, if you want to harvest comb honey, you should get yourself a bee escape, a triangular bee escape like this one here. This would go underneath the super, and the only way the bees can get out is down through here and out. I'm not going to use the bee escape. I want to get the honey off real quick. I'm going to use a fume board. This might be the best way. Yeah, I'm going to harvest this here with the fume board, and that way I don't involve 2 trips to the apiary. Now we're going to check this super here for readiness to harvest. This looks ready to harvest. The bees cap the comb over from top to bottom. You got to make sure it's capped at the bottom. I can really see down there pretty good, and I'm quite sure that it is. A little careful with your smoker, you don't want to get any ash. But we'll start the bees in the right direction, and we'll put the fume board on here. We're going to stay right with this. Get them out of there real quick. They're nearly all out of there, and that's only been a few seconds. Yep, they're nearly entirely out of that super. Still some on the bottom there. I'll get them out off of the hive. There's still a few bees in there, so I'm going to put this over here on this drip tray. The fume board is running out the last few bees. If you only make a little bit of comb honey, the bee escape is probably best. I run 50 hives or more for comb honey. Bee escape is 2 trips to the apiary. For me, I think this is what I need to do. The fume board gets the bees out. The fumes all dissipate away. I never noticed anything in the honey. It's only on there a short while. Now the drip tray comes in handy because oftentimes there's some burr comb on the bottom here, and the tray will save that wax. Wax has a little bit of value. Well, that one really wasn't too bad. But that one has a really nice full super Hogg Half Combs.